to the Kansas City Chiefs, a team I have a tumultuous relationship, shall we say, with their fan base, right? It works this way. I say something incendiary about the Chiefs, a hot take, something that I believe in, and they yell at me and then laugh at me when the Chiefs deliver. Funny thing, though, haven't heard from any of those guys in Kansas City since the Eagles flattened them in the Super Bowl. I haven't heard from any of them. And if you remember, we were in New Orleans for the show. I predicted the Eagles could run away with it. It looked prescient. I got a lot of YouTube views and Instagram. People were loving me for the Super Bowl prediction. Haven't heard from the Eagles fans lately. So we've had some NFL guys come on this week, talk about gambling, Adam Chernoff, Chris Felica. And the wheels started turning last night when I started to drill down on the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'll start with this. The offseason is when you improve your roster and fix issues, plug holes. Have you guys seen the Kansas City Chiefs offseason? They haven't done a damn thing. Their biggest signing, because we know the offensive line is a train wreck. It was in the Super Bowl. Then they traded Joe Thuney, who was a guard who they moved outside. Their biggest signing was Jaylon Moore. Who? Fifth rounder out of Western Michigan, who was a backup in San Francisco. A backup. Now, he's behind Trent Williams, which is kind of, understandable. Trent Williams, one of the best left tackles in the league. But I think he had 5 starts last season. That's it. He's going to be their new left tackle. This is how desperate the Chiefs were last year on the offensive line. They tried 4 different guys at left tackle. Thuney ended up being the best at the end of the season, but they moved off of him. He's now in Chicago. So that's the biggest issue I've had with the Chiefs. They have not improved at all. And, I love Travis Kelce. Me and my family like Taylor Swift. We went to see Taylor Swift in concert. I like Travis Kelce a lot. He's a Hall of Famer. He's coming off his worst season as a pro. He's 35, turns 36 in October. Travis Kelce, career low 3 touchdown catches. If you look, you could draw a direct line. It was like basically the stock market on Monday. Right down. Travis Kelce's career stats, right down. Folks, I like Kelce. Do you remember his last 3 playoff games last year? He's a ghost, invisible, didn't do a damn thing. Showed well in the opener against Houston. After that, nothing, non-factor. He's the safety valve for Patrick Mahomes. And I know what you're saying. We get Rashee Rice back. Okay, we'll wait to see if there's a suspension. We'll wait to see if he gets in more trouble in the next 5 months. But then I saw the really big issue with Kansas City. So last year, they went 11-0 in one-score games. Historic stuff. You don't see 11-0 in one-score games. And the staff pointed out to me this morning, Jay, it's not just 11-0 in one-score. They couldn't blow out anybody. They had the worst point differential of a 15-win team in NFL history. But it gets better. 2 teams in their division who finished behind them, the Chargers and Broncos, had a bigger point differential than the Kansas City Chiefs. What's that telling you? That the Chiefs are unable to blow teams out anymore because they don't have the horses. They're just not that good. They do have, however, Mahomes and Reid, arguably one of the best quarterback-coach combos after Belichick and Brady in NFL history. That can only carry you so far. And you guys know, if you've gambled at all, one-score games historically flip year to year. Just a little tidbit, the Denver Broncos went 1-6 in one-score games. So if the Broncos flip that and are, 4-3 next year, 3 extra wins, they might take the division. I think the Chargers are probably going to win that division this year. I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs are a playoff team next year. And I don't think they're cratering to like a 6-7 win team. But guys, 9 wins might not make the playoffs in the AFC. 9.
Okay. Let's talk about this. So, I knew what his conclusion was because I didn't watch this video, but I saw the thumbnail on YouTube, and I had already made it was on Friday, and I already made all the videos for the weekend, and I was like, yeah, I can't, it was late, and I was like, I just, I can't do it. But then I kind of realized, I was like, I do want to talk about this, though. I want to hear what he has to say, even if I'm going to disagree with it, but it was nice. It gives someone like me a lot to work with. There's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot. First off, the point differential. and saying like, oh, look at these other teams, they have a better point differential. What does that mean? It means that they don't have the horses or whatever he said to like blow out the teams, etc., etc. Okay, that's not quite what it says. Because first off, the Chiefs were obviously significantly injured. They were down Rashee Rice, they were down Hollywood Brown, they were down Pacheco, etc. So you're going to score less points. We know that. This is also an incredibly smart team. So they actually understand, hey, we're going to have to play some small ball. We're going to have to be conservative. We're going to have to really, rely on our defense. So it's going to be, we got to play high level football when it matters. We're not going to be going for these big swings, et cetera, et cetera. And that's something that Andy and Patrick Mahomes, deeply understand together. And it's why, as I've highlighted throughout all last season, like Patrick Mahomes was throwing the shortest passes out of like any other quarterback in the NFL. He was throwing the shortest, intended air yards of like any other quarterback, but still through the roof in yards after catch. And so, again, that's the genius of Andy Reid and the willingness and deeply understanding of Patrick Mahomes to know, like, this is how we have to win games. And again, not all quarterbacks can do that. Not all quarterbacks are willing to do that. Patrick Mahomes doesn't even want to do that necessarily. He's essentially said that out loud, being like, I want to get back to like, the big exciting plays. Like I want to get back to the more high powered offense and, and some of the, Mahomes magic and stuff. So like, he admitted even in 23, last year, not this last season when they didn't win the Super Bowl, the year before that, he was like, wasn't really fun, like it wasn't fun. Like he wants to let it rip. He wants to kind of scramble and throw that 45-yard pass, down the field. Like that's what he wants, but he still obviously has a willingness and an understanding and a knowledge of like, well, you know what? Sometimes this is the way you have to win football games. And again, credit to Andy Reid as well for actually knowing and how to do all that, because you have other teams that have, also injuries, like the 49ers, perfect example of this. You had Brock Purdy thrown to a lot of injured players as to dealing with a lot of offensive injuries, and yet he was still at the top for average depth of target. And it's just kind of like, no, take a page out of Andy Reid's playbook, like throw some shorter passes here, get some more, scheme guys open in a way to get more yards after catch. So when J-Mac says, coaching or whatever, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid can get you so far, it's like, yeah, they can get you so far. That's the playoffs. Because also, you're still talking about having a great defense. If they didn't have a great defense, okay, if they just had a top 10 defense, top 15 defense, then I would say, yes, I could see that, right? If everything else was equal, then I could say, yeah, the Chiefs are going to struggle. It's going to be too much. You find yourself in like a Cincinnati Bengals situation where it's like, it doesn't matter how amazing your offense is. It doesn't matter how amazing your quarterback is playing. Like if your defense is trash, you're just not going to win. That's not who the Kansas City Chiefs, are. And they're also not dependent on just a handful of defensive guys, because Spags is a tremendous brain for that defense. So even when you have to draft new guys, when you have to get some guys in free agencies and trades, or, replace guys because they get injured, like that's the benefit of having Spags. So like you're always going to have high levels of consistency and competitiveness with the Kansas City Chiefs. I know it's more fun to make a video saying, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs make the playoffs, rather than make a video and saying, yeah, I think the Kansas City Chiefs will be a pretty good team, but I don't think they're going to be anywhere as good or great as they were in years past, right? Like people say like, oh, well, that's too lukewarm of a take. It's got to be a hot take. And it's just like, I jumping to this conclusion that like they're now only going to win like 8 or 9 games or something, that's a tough one, especially if everyone's healthy, especially if Xavier Worthy's there, Rashee Rice is there, Pacheco's there, Hollywood Brown's there. Like, you're right. Travis Kelce is going down, and that is just a fact. We know that. But, like, I think Patrick Mahomes is now going to be entering the era where he understands, yeah, Kelce's no longer that guy. I kind of held on as long as I could. I got to find my other security blanket now. I got to really start developing this relationship with Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, et cetera, et cetera. And Andy Reid is also going to know, yeah, I can only trust on Travis Kelce so much. Like, he's still a dog. He's still that guy. But, like, yeah, game in and game out, probably not. And even in the playoffs, once upon a time, we would think no matter what playoffs, he's going to be there. He's going to step up. might not be the case anymore. And so now the Chiefs definitely deeply understand that. Patrick Mahomes deeply understands that. Andy Reid understands that. Heck, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, etc., etc., Spags, like they all understand that. And they're going to accommodate. They're going to work accordingly. If this team was only good because they had, they nailed the draft or, whatever it was and it was just like very narrowly specific, then I would say, yeah, when some of these pieces are less than ideal, right, they could really just kind of collapse and fall. But that's not the way it is. I kept saying throughout the entire year with the Kansas City Chiefs, I was like, as long as you have Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Spags, like that trio alone is always, always, always going to give you a chance to win a game. And now you add a great defense, a top defense, top 2 defense, second to only the Philadelphia Eagles. You most definitely are going to win some games, no matter how many injuries you're dealing with the offense. Because again, you're creating an environment where you only have to find a way to get like 18 points, 19 points, sometimes like even less than that. And it's just like, you do that, you're going to win some games. You're going to find some ways to to win. And now you add on the fact that again, Rashee Rice will be there, Xavier Worthy will be there. And again, I understand Rashee Rice will probably be suspended, but we haven't, heard anything about that, when that will take place, how long, who really knows. But and also, like, we know, I understand that this draft isn't like the deepest draft, so maybe the Chiefs can't fix everything overnight, but like I don't know, 8 or 9 wins is that's low. And I understand, I do think the Broncos are getting better, the Chargers are getting better, and I kept saying that this division is tough, and I even said, listen, this division, the Chiefs like automatic win over this division is over. I said that before, but it doesn't mean that like they're no longer the team to beat in that division. It doesn't mean that they're no longer have a chance to win the division. Like, it doesn't mean that you're going to be like, oh, the Chargers leapfrog them or the Broncos leapfrog them. Like, you wouldn't say that either. You would say, listen, the Chiefs definitely over the last 9 years have had a big cakewalk. You're playing against teams that have like no quarterbacks, no coaches, no coordinate, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, whichever the team is. And so like, yeah, you had a lot of easy, division titles there. And that now is seemingly, has closed. But it doesn't mean like that they just like, have to just run through brick wall after brick wall after brick wall just to fight to compete to get to the division. So, I just think we're swinging this pendulum too far, and using the Eagles as a reference point fundamentally doesn't really make sense, because the Eagles were clearly the best team in the NFL. They were clearly the most dominant team in the NFL last year. Like, that's, you really can't argue that when you hang 95 points in the NFC Championship game in the Super Bowl. Like, whether you want to say, oh, it was all their O-line or it was all Saquon Barkley, it doesn't matter, right? They did it, right? So they were obviously dominant. They were obviously, attacking. They got after Patrick Mahomes. And even that O-line was obviously not perfect, but it also wasn't trash either, because it survived throughout the whole season and even in the playoffs. The Buffalo Bills did not do that to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Houston Texans did not do that to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm trying to think of any of the more like most recent games that they played leading up into the into the playoffs. Trying to think, the Raiders, whoever on Christmas, right? Didn't they play the Raiders on Christmas, or the Pittsburgh Steelers? I don't remember, but like whatever it was, like the Eagles were exceptional, and the Eagles were a top defense. The Eagles were a top team. The Eagles were a dominant team. That makes sense. But like I said, the Buffalo Bills did not do that in the conference championship game. So to think though that like, okay, this O-line is bad and all that, which it obviously is not, exceptionally great. They were able to still hold it together. They were still able to be good enough to obviously win games. But when you go up against a team as great as the Eagles, it's not good enough, as proven in the Super Bowl. But it was good enough against the Buffalo Bills. It was good enough against the Houston Texans. So, like, you're right. If you play another 10 teams that are as great as the Eagles were last season, I agree. The Kansas City Chiefs are in massive trouble. They got no chance. Game, set, match, no playoffs. But, like, that's not the case. That's obviously not the case. So, I think we're being a little too extreme here. So, yeah. pretty interesting. And since J Max said in the beginning, oh, I have a contentious, I think he said contentious relationship with Kansas City Chiefs fans. And a lot of Kansas City Chiefs fans don't like me because they think that I'm biased or that I'm a hater of the Kansas City Chiefs. And like, here's a take that literally proves that could not be further from the truth. This is another perfect example of just how consistent, honest, and not hot take and not trolling and not hater I am, because I easily could just be like, yeah, man, that's what J-Mac's saying. I totally agree. Kansas City Chiefs, they're trash, they're this, that. And like, I literally said the exact opposite of all of that. So, boom. Pretty funny stuff. I do get entertained to a degree. Like, I do get why people bring such in you know, extreme hot takes, because they can be fun to combat, and either way they elicit a reaction. But yeah, I think a hot take still needs to be rooted in at least like a little bit more logic, a little bit more groundedness. And like, I get it, the Chiefs won so many close games, etc., etc., but like, if first off, if they were completely healthy last year and they did that, then that would be more telling, right? If Rasheed Rice, all those guys were all playing, that would be more telling to me. Again, if their defense wasn't that good, that would be more telling to me. If they didn't really have a great coach, like, right, like if Andy Reid wasn't there, but their team was able to still have all this success because of the roster itself, and now you're starting to lose pieces and you have to bring in new pieces, then I would be like, I don't know how they're going to be able to put this together. But like, we know who Andy is. We know who Spags is. We know who Patrick Mahomes is. Like, those guys will find a way. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Kansas City Chiefs not making the playoffs, according to Jason McIntyre? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.